Okay, quick video from me because I just want to talk about this whole situation that has happened today and I can't quite get my head around it. So I really need you guys to get involved in the comments down below. Christian Horner came out today in the team's press release and said that it was an important time to confirm our driver lineup for 2025. And they have done so. They have confirmed that Sergio Perez will be Max Verstappen's Red Bull teammate for at least the 2025 season in what seems to be like a year plus a possible year extension onto the Mexican's contract moving into the 2026 season. Because Christian Horner said confirming for 2025, whereas Sergio Perez also came out and said he's delighted to be staying here to continue our journey together and contribute to this team's great history for 2 more years. So whether it's 1 year, whether it's 2 years, I think it's going to be a little bit of a combination of both, kind of a 1 year with a possible 1 year extension. But that doesn't really matter to me right now. I think, obviously, with the Mexicans staying put, possibly into the new regulation cycle, it's put Red Bull in quite a strange place, in my opinion. Obviously, Sergio Perez has been with the Red Bull team since they got rid of Alex Albon in 2020, and he came in for the 2021 season. In hindsight, obviously, they maybe got rid of Alex Albon a little bit too quickly, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Instead, I want to focus on Sergio Perez and the fact that, he assisted Max Verstappen to 3 consecutive drivers' titles, possibly 4 by the end of the season, maybe even 5 by the end of the contract next year, and then moving into 2026, who knows what's going to happen. And he also contributed to the last 2 Red Bull Constructors' Championship wins as well. Okay, last year's one, Max Verstappen would have pretty much won on his own, but at least the year before that, he was in the mix and was picking up those points and making sure that he was contributing to Red Bull's Constructors' Championship victory. And I think that was the thing. Red Bull kind of came out and Christian Horner again said continuity and stability are very important for the team and said that Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen were a successful and robust partnership. And I agree, they have been incredibly successful in their time together. You can't argue against the fact that they've won 2 championships in a row, 3 in a row in the Drivers' Championships, but it doesn't feel like a robust partnership to me, if I'm honest, Christian. I mean, Sergio Perez certainly started the 2024 season strongly. Obviously, a trio of second-place finishes. It was looking like he'd turned it around in the first 4-5 races of this season, but his form has started to dip once again in recent race weekends. And that just makes me wonder if they've made this choice a little bit too soon. Like, it felt like if they'd have come out with this statement after the first 4 races, it would have been hard to argue against because Sergio Perez had completely turned around his form after what was a pretty poor 2023 season. I mean, it wasn't that hard to turn it around because I say pretty poor, it was pretty terrible 2023 season from Sergio Perez, but it looked like he turned it around. Then again, this dip in form. And why has Red Bull decided to make this decision at this point in the season? It seems strange to reward Sergio Perez with a brand new contract when his form has just started to dip off and when he's just starting to show that maybe he's not quite good enough to do the job for the team, especially moving into the second half of this season. And we have so much of the season left to play out. We've only had 8 races of 24 so far this year. We've still got 2/3 of this year to play out, let alone offering him a contract for 2025 and 2026 as well. And last time we saw Sergio Perez in Monaco, he exited Q1, obviously had that collision with the barriers, and then his season started to fall apart. This year, we've come to Monaco. He's exited qualifying in Q1. Okay, he didn't hit the barriers during qualifying this time, and it wasn't really his fault that he hit the barriers during the race either, but it does feel like history is repeating itself just 1 year later. Sergio Perez has started to see a dip in form. Monaco has come along. There's been quite a lot of pressure on him. Kind of hasn't clicked in the Monaco weekend. And then, last year at least, we saw him completely spiral away from Max Verstappen, who was completely dominant last year. I don't think we're going to see the likes of Max Verstappen. Well, already he can't win as many races as he did last year this season because he's already lost 3 and the percentages last year were just absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, I just don't know if this is the right place and the right time to offer Sergio Perez this contract. I think is what I'm trying to say. I know this video is going to be a little bit rambly, but it just feels like surely they noticed a pattern with Sergio Perez last year where it was that middle portion of the season that went really wrong. And they kind of wanted to see whether it was going to be that middle portion of the season again. But they haven't. They've decided to offer him the contract now. And we're going into the races that last year were so bad. If they're bad again, I just don't know how they can kind of justify this decision for everybody around the team, especially as the current driver market development wars, like the craziness of this 2024 driver market is still continuing to play out and heating up, to be honest with you. Plus the fact that the development war for the cars, the fact that McLaren and Ferrari are closing the gap, and in 2024 and definitely 2025, Red Bull is likely to be coming under increasing pressure from Ferrari and McLaren every single race weekend. And Red Bull, I just don't think can rest upon the fact that these championship titles are going to fall into their lap like they did last year. They're not going to be able to easily cruise towards victories like they have in the past couple of seasons. We are starting to see that as much as Verstappen will still be right up there. I mean, Max Verstappen is still one of the best drivers, if not the best driver on the grid. He is still leading the championship right now. But it just feels like the gap between Perez and Max in performance is still quite large. It's just that gap that wasn't quite filled with the rest of the grid last year, even though there was that gap between Max and Perez. Perez still finished close to Max in the championship. It feels like this year that gap could easily be filled with Lando, Oscar, Charles, Carlos, obviously Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari in 2025. Suddenly, if those names are filling the gap between Verstappen and Perez in the Drivers' Championship, you've got a very different complexion to the drivers' standings. And then Red Bull just need a driver lineup, I feel like anyway, that is going to be able to battle with those pairs. You're looking at Leclerc and Hamilton as a pair, Lando and Oscar, especially if Oscar continues to get better. I made a video about Oscar a few days ago, and I think he is genuinely the real deal and can do incredible things in Formula One. And I just think Perez is on the other side of that. Perez's form is starting to drip away, and I don't think Perez is a bad driver. I just think there are other drivers on the grid that are so much better. And Verstappen and Perez as a partnership is just nowhere near the level of those other partnerships that are going to be in cars closer to Sergio Perez next season. And there was a point earlier on in this year, right, where we didn't really know how the 2025 driver grid was going to look. We knew that Lewis Hamilton was moving. He was the first domino to fall. But there was a possibility, and there was a lot of talk about Red Bull picking up the likes of Fernando Alonso or even Carlos Sainz, who is still available. And you just can't say that neither of those drivers would be an upgrade on Sergio Perez in any way whatsoever. And I think Red Bull have just proven that they're more concerned about letting Max Verstappen be the clear number one and not having any real challenge, and just backing themselves that 1.5 Red Bull cars will be enough but to just about bring those championships home. Obviously, the Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen should be able to clasp them in 2024 and 2025 if the car is still where it is and Red Bull are still that dominant force. The constructors, though, it just feels a little bit more open, in my opinion. And then if you look at the fact that Red Bull, on balance, they have still got the best car. And even when they, I don't know whether this has changed, but when they didn't have the best car, they wouldn't have made a decision like this. Like, it just doesn't feel very Red Bull. Even though Sergio Perez has been there a while now, they've never really shown drivers any kind of sort of, I don't know the word. They haven't really shown any drivers any love, even if they've been with Red Bull for a very long time, unless they've won. The reason they love Max Verstappen is he's delivering championships, right? Red Bull built its reputation in this recent era, and actually since it's begun, as a team that will make cutthroat decisions. And this just feels like the opposite. It feels like Sergio Perez is having a much more lenient Red Bull life than Pierre Gasly or Alex Albon ever did. And they were Red Bull juniors. They'd come through Red Bull. You know, they had the backing of the team. They'd been in the sister team. They'd come all the way through the system. And then they've just got Sergio Perez, who had no affiliation to Red Bull beforehand, picked him up, put him in, and given him effectively a free ride to an incredible end to his Formula One career. And I'm not saying that Sergio Perez is a bad driver in any way whatsoever. Obviously, Sergio Perez is a 6-time Grand Prix winner, 5 of those with Red Bull. He did have a win before he came to the Red Bull team. He's finished second in the World Championship before. He played a vital role in Max Verstappen picking up that first championship and beating Lewis Hamilton in 2021. Obviously, the driving that he did in Abu Dhabi will be remembered by the team forever. But as much as he's been great for the team, had a great career and deserved a shot in a team like Formula One, in my opinion, a team like Red Bull in Formula One, in my opinion, at some point, it just felt like Red Bull were coming towards an inevitable end with Sergio Perez. It felt like there were much better options available. It felt like they could have moved in lots of different directions, even gone back to a driver like Alex Albon, who is at Williams now and has now been confirmed at Williams. So maybe they had to confirm Sergio Perez because other drivers that they wanted are getting locked down into other seats. But having said that, now we have Sergio Perez staying at Red Bull, and that's set in stone. Red Bull are very much a known quantity. Everybody knows what they're aiming for now. Whereas I did feel like changing Sergio Perez for somebody else, especially going into 2026, especially with all the rumors going around with Max Verstappen, it felt like just bolstering this lineup would have been a good idea. Now, having Sergio Perez in there, it becomes a little bit trickier. I personally have been kind of advocating for Carlos Sainz to go into that second Red Bull seat. I've done a couple of videos talking about predictions for the 2025 grid, a couple of videos about who I think would be the best choice for Red Bull, and I've always said it would be Carlos Sainz. And Carlos Sainz is still on the market for next year, which again is why I'm a little bit confused at why Red Bull have made this decision so early. He's had such a strong start to the 2024 season. Obviously picked up that win in Australia where Red Bull faltered. He was the guy once again to pick up where Red Bull have fallen off. Obviously, he did that last year in Singapore. Okay, Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc have also got wins now, but Carlos Sainz was the first to do it and the second to do it since Singapore last year. So it did feel like he was in a really, really good spot. With Daniel Ricciardo not impressing enough at Red Bull's sister team RB. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda doing incredibly, but still not looking like Red Bull really want Yuki Tsunoda. I've never really understood that relationship. It felt like they brought Yuki Tsunoda in, obviously, for Honda, but even though he's done really, really well, he's never looked like he's got a shot at a Red Bull seat, despite how well he does. Like, he could be winning races, and I think Red Bull will be like, no, we'll stick with Sergio Perez. I don't know why. They just don't really have that connection with Yuki in the same way, and I don't know, it just felt Carlos Sainz was the biggest threat to taking Sergio Perez's seat after Fernando Alonso had been confirmed, Albon had been confirmed as well, but it does leave Carlos Sainz in a little bit of a weird area. Obviously, to finish up this video, we can touch upon Carlos Sainz. It leaves him with 2 options for 2025, in my opinion, both of them back of the grid. Obviously, he would have been hoping to go from Ferrari to at least a team in and alongside them. Obviously, Red Bull, the best option because they're right up at the top of the championships right now. McLaren's not there. Looked at Mercedes, but it just feels like Mercedes are still prompting to get in Kimi Antonelli. Then you kind of go a little bit further down. Aston Martin have got both of their drivers confirmed. You go a little bit further down. RB, do you really want to go to the sister Red Bull team? Liam Lawson's most likely to end up in one of those seats if Daniel Ricciardo or Yuki Tsunoda moves on. So Carlos Sainz can't go there. And again, you're kind of falling really far down the grid until you hit Audi or Williams, in my opinion, for 2025. I think they're the only 2 options that are left for Carlos Sainz. I know that Haas have been discussed, but I think Ollie Behrman goes in there. Does he replace Kevin Magnussen? Probably not. Can he replace Logan Sargent at Williams? It'd be an incredible pickup from Williams if he does go in there. Does he go to Audi? It's so frustrating. If he goes to Audi, it has to work. And I'm not sure Audi are going to be this like championship contending team. Even in the lifespan of Carlos Sainz's Formula One career that's left, I do think it's going to take Audi 5, maybe 6 years to actually put it all together and become a top team in Formula One. Like, you can't come in day one and be the fastest team on the grid anymore. I just don't think that's the case. And then you go even further down. I know that Esteban Ocon has just been confirmed to be leaving Alpine at the end of this season. That then opens up Esteban Ocon moving in various directions. So if he fills that Audi seat or that Williams seat or that Haas seat, again, closes another door to Carlos Sainz. And it just feels ridiculous that Carlos Sainz, who has been one of the best drivers on the grid for a little while now, has been incredibly quick his entire time at Ferrari and was also incredibly quick at McLaren, at Renault before that, at Toro Rosso before that as well. He's never had, I would say, like a horrendous run or a horrendous season throughout his career. He's always shown that he's got pace, and he could be off the Formula One grid next year through no real fault of his own. Like, he's never done anything wrong at Ferrari, in my opinion. I think just Lewis Hamilton is Lewis Hamilton, and that's the best option. However, I would love to know your thoughts. I feel like I've rambled on enough about Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz. Let me know in the comments down below. Why now for Red Bull? Why do you think they've confirmed Sergio Perez? Do you think it's a good idea that they've confirmed Sergio Perez? And what on earth does Carlos Sainz now do? Is it just that Audi option and hope they can get their act together at some point soon? Or do you think Carlos Sainz ends up maybe even leaving Formula One and going somewhere else? Because the doors are closing very quickly for Carlos Sainz and he needs to sort himself out sooner rather than later. But let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. We'll be live for Canada this weekend, so make sure you're subscribed for that, and I will see you.